Chapter 19. Destroy Bad Universes. As Gatto says, we are the center of the universe. This is the most empowering realization you will ever have. And yet, crystal balls, interdimensional portals like the internet, entice and frighten us with uncountable universes. We have demonstrated that they are all operating simultaneously. Navigating them is difficult and even maddening. Most will choose cul-de-sac reality simulations, such as partisanship. These conveniently give one permission to ignore the cacophony of conflicting facts in favor of whatever supports the universe you have aligned yourself with. The growing number of people who have rejected partisanship can easily see how both realities are simply a two-sided coin of one. The effects of these realities both lead to enslavement, materialism, war, murder, selfishness, and all manner of harm to ourselves and to others. It is also harm we inflict by proxy on others by choosing to exist in these terrible realms. Yet there's great opportunity here. At least in America, there are really only two dominant consensus realities. Their very existence depends on our belief in them. It seems irresponsible, but one could simply tune them out. Revel in your full sensory universe. What I found by doing this is that the quality of my life drastically improved. My mood is not held hostage by whatever the latest event the partisan media has cooked up. Consider that what they do is a kind of sorcery. They will events into being. They require your attention to become part of consensus reality. Imagine if we all just stopped paying attention. The reality-making machine would collapse, yet reality itself would not. We would naturally transition to a better consensus reality, one more connected to our sensory one. The sensory reality of one's own experience, at least mine, is markedly more civil and pleasant than the one I'm bombarded with via mass media. When it becomes uncivil, there's usually no question about what's right and wrong. One rarely needs to engage truth cipher in a subjective sensory universe. Our intuition usually tells us what we need to know. So, that's almost like an addendum to the corporate media chapter. So what am I saying there? I'm saying, I'm actually advocating to stop paying attention because, I think, many of us, let's say you're American, many of us were indoctrinated to almost to see like reading the news or reading the New York Times as like a civic duty. Like you're better because you're reading the newspaper. Like you're informed. So they kind of lock you in really early and it kind of gets grafted onto your internal value system. Like I get up in the morning, I read my paper and I did something good. But, when the agenda is so, shaped, like what are you really being informed with? Like you're being shaped. Your views are being slowly or rapidly hijacked and manipulated. Like they basically you're indoctrinating yourself if you read these things religiously every day, so that you can be in their box. And that just goes to show like that. Like my reality is not, I don't live in a TMZ reality. I don't live even in a New York Times reality, where you have these sort of posh people, just sort of living nauseatingly wealthy lives. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's sort of, they create a picture of what reality is supposed to be. And if your reality does not conform to that, and I would suggest most people's reality does not conform to anything like the Times, you start to feel like you're deficient because your reality is not the one they're presenting. Like, first there's just the lifestyle reality of, these people buying, multi-million-dollar homes and, just doing all sorts of things that just are out of reach for most people, including myself. And I don't actually begrudge anybody for prosperity. But the idea that you are, like the way you probably might internalize that is that you will, there's nothing wrong if you don't live like that either, and most people don't. It's not, people have different priorities, and, having more than you need might not be the priority. Like maybe that's a tangent. So there's that. There's the life. There's what your life should look like, which is a big part of the New York Times. And then there's what the world outside your life is. So that's an area where most people don't engage with the dangerous world that is presented in the news. That's almost any major newspaper, every major newspaper. They're presenting you with facts to make you scared. What part of this truth cipher is just saying like you could go down a rabbit hole of like, oh, everything is staged. But, I've come to understand that like you could just cherry pick your facts. Like everything in a multiverse kind of world, you're going to find every single outcome. And it's all, these media organizations are just framing reality because they have an agenda. They want you on their page. They want you to think like them, to agree with them, to consent to whatever their solutions are. So, I could start I think I probably talked about this in the corporate media chapter. Like I could just start my own media organization, write out a covert mission statement of, I want people to think lizards are controlling the world. And believe it or not, I would get a lot of great interviews, and I would get a lot of maybe even photographic evidence. I could produce compelling material to support a worldview that most people would think is ludicrous. And there's people who would also believe it. And, they would, maybe not a lot, but I could basically just do the reptilian times and find credible facts. I wouldn't have to make anything up. I could just cherry pick maybe from other media that's out there, probably from other media that's out there, because that's how this thing works. Like you just sort of build on a scaffolding of other information. We have this idea that journalists are going out into the field, and sometimes they are, but they're going out with preconceived notions. So, they're going to say, okay, I need to find a story that supports my hypothesis, and they will find it. There's going to be somebody who's going to give them the interview that they want because their perspective aligns with theirs. And so that's how you create a dominant narrative, a reality. That's how you pretty much live in a reality like that. Like if you actually do live in that reality, you're gonna be miserable, and you might not want to. You might not want to grapple with why that reality is making you miserable. I mean, I don't think people even think they have the right to say, I reject this reality. And that's where we get to the title of this chapter. Destroy bad universes. The thing is, we're so powerful that, like let's take CNN. And I think everybody, thousands of people every day wake up to the fact that it's complete garbage. And just all you have to do is turn it off. I mean, it's an obvious solution. Don't give it any attention. Don't feed it. Don't give it any attention, energy. Make it irrelevant. Like, what would happen if we did that? If we made all these agenda-driven news sources irrelevant? Yes, there'd be a vacuum. New news sources would happen, but maybe some of them would be good. But that's all. You just have to starve them. I'm just saying, you're allowed to ignore the nonsense, which is what I've been doing. And I honestly, I do not walk around in fear, at least, particularly with the news of the day, which is, it is full throttle. Like when I do tune in and see, I guess I do tune into alt media, so I get more of kaleidoscope of the. I get to look in the interdimensional internet window of the events, on the events. Twitter is a good way to cultivate that, because you can just follow people of crazy divergent opinions. I'll follow, hard alt-right identitarians. I'll follow radical leftists. I want the most extreme positions on events. Although it's hard for me to follow liberals because it's just, that picture of reality is so toxic, yet so entrenched. Like I already know what the agenda is. I don't really need to follow it because it's so, it's so obvious. It's so wrong. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. But basically, we can destroy these bad universes by not paying attention to them. We don't need to go protesting. Especially we're talking about reality. I'm not talking about government. I'm not really talking about politics and those things. But even though they're all tied up in this, because how do you get your information about politics but through the media? So, it's basically like it could work like this. Like you need to shut off. You could try shutting off the bad signals, the signals that make you feel crappy. New York Times, CNN, all the, there's just so much nonsense. At least like with something like TMZ, like you kind of feel like it's kind of presented as sensational. So I don't even know if it's truly asking you to believe. Like when things are presented in or like with InfoWars, it's like it's hard to believe everything that's coming out of InfoWars because it's almost like a tabloid. It's so sensational. It's like an alt media, full throttle. Like they're giving you the craziest perspective all the time. But if you're following like all this sort of official media, I think it's great to have something like InfoWars to just shake you up and say like, well, they're saying this and they're saying this. They're completely opposite ends of the reality spectrum. So really, once you have that in your brain, you get to pick, because you're just not going to, you can't believe anything on either side, and you need a truth cipher to kind of say, well, what's the best reality? What should I choose that's going to be my choice? Actually does make a difference at some level. How do I make the best choice of a reality? So that just goes to say, like, let's give ourselves permission to not pay attention. Like if I was like a Buddhist monk, or like just any kind of monk, and I just withdrew from society, some oath or something, nobody would think I'm a bad person. I'm a monk, I'm not paying attention. Like I could say, you know what, I'm going to withdraw from reality for 2 years because I'm a monk. Are people really going to judge you and say, well, you're not informed, you really need to be informed? No, I don't think so. I mean, maybe somebody would, but people would respect that decision. So if you unplug, think of it that way. You're doing this for your health. Like nobody's looking out for your health better than you are. Your mental health, your emotional health. And part of this is just you need to be able to filter this information and make the right choices. And I just don't think there's any way to do it if you lock yourself into strictly corporate media. You are locked into that universe. You're locked into a fear paradigm. You're being told what to think. It's dangerous, because when they hijack your consent like that, they're going to use it to lay the responsibility at your feet when sort of obviously wrong decisions like war consensus happen. They're going to say, well, you supported it too, and they won't be wrong. The blame gets distributed. But there's I think there's one more point I wanted to make. Let me see if I can think of it. I think I'm losing my train of thought. A lot of vehicles. You know what? Maybe it'll come to me on a different episode. I mean, we went pretty long. I hope I've conveyed how we can destroy bad universes non-violently. It's the easiest thing in the world. Don't do anything. Do not lend your attention. Think for yourself. But you can get get you if you get a lot of different information, varied information sources, you're better equipped to make a decision. This is what I wanted to say about. I remember the thought I lost. If you shut out the news, the thing to really pay hyper close attention to is your local sphere, because that's the piece of the universe that you can most likely affect. So when you see transgressions happening at the local level, at a level that you could probably do something, like if your freedom is being restricted in front of your eyes, then is the time to act, because you can do something about it. That's the news that's most possibly more relevant to you, because you can do something about it. So that's sort of the little addendum I wanted to tack onto this. Like, you might have to shut out what's happening overseas and what the imperial powers that have appointed themselves want to do and want you to agree with. You don't want to lend your consent to that stuff, and I don't know what you can do about it if you're just living your local life like most of us. But when you can see your freedoms transgressed in front of your eyes, I think that that's the time to pay attention, because you can do something. Even protest. I think protest is when your rights are viscerally being taken away. I think you've hit the tipping point of when protests can really do something, when action will be effective, and when you do need to follow news. I think a more localized source of news is not going to have corporate influence. You're just going to have real people with opinions. Still having trying to railroad you into their point of view. But maybe you can follow a few different point of views. Same thing, follow divergent point of views, so you can make up your mind. But you have a truth cipher. You have values. So you want to pick realities, especially realities in your sensory sphere that affect you directly. Like, you want to pick moral realities, and that's what I wanted to say. Because we want to destroy bad universes. But it doesn't mean destroy all universes. That means, as you can see, the next chapter we'll get into what do we do, how do we create better universes. So we will get into that. So that's it for today.